Hi there and welcome. This is Melissa Wagner. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager at PTC, and I'm here to go ahead and kick off today's event, the Creo Illustrate 9.0. What's new? So we had a new release coming out, and Jeff Kuhn is our speaker. He's the product manager, or I'm sorry, the product management director, and he's going to be going ahead and presenting today. We do have a full hour. We are expecting a large audience today, and we do have plenty of time for questions. So please, during the event, go ahead and submit your questions into the Q&A box. We will get a report, so it's important that you put them in the Q&A box, not the chat box. In case we run out of time, we can get your questions at a later date. So like I said, we are expecting a lot of attendees and a lot of the questions today. So Jeff is going to be pausing in between topics here and answering a couple of questions along the way. But then, of course, we will have a Q&A session at the end. And we do have another person on the call, Scott Thompson. He's an expert on Creo Illustrate at the Arbor Text, and he's going to be helping with questions as well. So as we go ahead and check attendees here, it looks like we have a number of participants that's gone ahead and attended. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Jeff, do you want to go ahead and kick things off?
Sure, thank you. So as was just mentioned, my name is Jeff Kuhn. I am going to be presenting what's new with Creo Illustrate 9.0, which just released earlier this month. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. So just as a basic agenda, so you're up to speed on what we're going to be talking about, we've added the ability to control figures with view states, improve consistency in using MultiBody parts in the user interface in Creo Illustrate. We have a new publishing option for Vuforia Procedures, background processing for video exporting, Inset View callouts. We've added some new controls for that to make it easier to fine-tune your images, pre-configured item list, as well as being able to unlink 2D figures. And down at the bottom, with this release, we now officially support Windows 11. So with that, we will jump into the first topic, controlling figures with view states. So we've always had the ability to be able to create a new figure from a view state, assuming that the CAD data that you bring in actually has more than just the default view state. So what we've done here is we've applied the ability to, at any time, be able to use these view states, and even as a separate topic, being able to use the view state cameras so that you can better manipulate the image that you want to create. So I'm going to go ahead and demo that. So you can see here we have a figure with lots of parts and whatnot. So at any point now, you can come up here to view states, and I can switch to another view state. You see this one does not have any of the, excuse me. Yeah, okay. So we can turn that off. We can go into different structures and views. You can see we can also manipulate the parts themselves, all that kind of good stuff. You also have options with the properties. You can specify whether you want the view state to control the location, visibility, or appearance. So in essence, color, can you see it, and where is it? And so by toggling these view states would impact how it's actually displaying those parts. And again, you can do this at any time. One of the other advantages that this gives is the ability to duplicate a figure and then apply a different view state for it. And maybe that view state is controlling the configuration. So if you have an overloaded structure and the view states that are in the CAD data are set up so that you can see different configurations within that CAD data, you've already created an exploded state. you duplicate it, you apply a new view state to it, and you now have that without having to do a lot of the extra work. Granted, you may have a few parts you need to manipulate here and there to take advantage of it, but in general, it will cut down on your time. Now, as far as the cameras, you can see I've actually got two different assemblies. The first one only has a default view state. The second one has more than that. So based on, if I wanted to just choose, camera positions, I can do that as well. So if there's a particular view state camera that I want to use, I can use it. And you can always reset things using your figure view if that's what you'd like to do. So do we have any questions on this first topic?
None yet.
All right. Then we will go ahead and move on to the next one. Improve consistency for multi-body parts. Now, a while ago, we added the ability to interact with multi-body parts in the edit structure menu. So you could either turn it on or off globally, so to speak, for those multi-bodies in the edit structure. But you didn't have the opportunity to dynamically interact with that on a per figure basis. So with this update, we have added being able to interact with the multi-body parts in the SBOM structure itself. So if we switch over to this one, you can see I've got multi-body. I can, toggle the visibility of the various components. This is actually just a single part, even if I come out here, but this single part has multi-bodies to it. And I have the option to display or not display those individual components. Anybody have any questions on that?
We have a question. It is related to Creo CAD packages, not Creo Illustrate. So I can work on answering this question in the Q&A. And I do see another question here, Jeff. It says, from the view states, can we add balloons? And will the balloons be reusable in other states?
So when you add a balloon call out or an annotation, that actually becomes a component of the part. So as long, like if you duplicated a figure, or if you apply a different view state to the same figure, as long as that part is still visible, then the call out will stay. So it's not going to disappear unless the part itself disappears. So if the view state ends up moving the part, the call out will follow the part. If the view state makes the part disappear, then the call out will disappear for that part.
All right, great. We have some more coming in. Looks like, let me read these here and maybe we can move on and I'll summarize.
Okay. Then we will move on to the next one. Publishing option for Vuforia Procedures. I'm not sure if everybody is aware, in 8.1, we gave the ability to export a Creo Illustrate sequence as a Vuforia procedure file. So this would be to send that information to either export, capture, or instruct on the Vuforia side. This particular update adds that to the publishing options inside of Creo Illustrate. So now instead of exporting them one at a time, you'd be able to set up an export option, or excuse me, a publishing option. And from there, every time you publish out, you could in essence be publishing out these procedures. This is also now part of the server side. So if you're using the server side publishing in Windchill for Creo Illustrate, and you have these options set up, your content would be published on the server as well. So just to show a quick example of that. So here we have just a very simple sequence inside of Creo Illustrate. Nothing overly fancy, just some animated content. We also have some descriptive text. On step 2, we also have an acknowledgement. And this is just 3 fairly simple steps. So before, go to the animation tab. If I went to export, this was added in 8.1. I could then export this. I can set my video and still image export options, that kind of thing. But I would have to do each individual sequence file. So now, if you go into options and go down to publishing, and you want to add that, you can see now you have it available here. You still have the same limitations. You do need to specify a page. That's where we get the height width for the video. So you would still need to make sure that each one of your sequences that you wanted to export has that page. And for those that have not seen it yet, I'm going to go ahead and give a quick demonstration on that. So right now I'm in Vuforia Editor. So this could be either Expert Capture or Instruct or both. And I can go in and import an asset, in this case, a Creo Illustrate sequence. And there is my exported file or published in this particular case. And I can open that up. It will upload. It automatically generates a folder to put it in. And as soon as it's done uploading, almost there. It's going to unpack this and turn it into a finished procedure. Now I can go ahead and click on this Show Files and Library, and it will bring this up. The thumbnail image from this is actually the one from Creo Illustrate for this particular figure. If I open that up, this is a pre-built procedure that can now be distributed just like any other expert capture style piece of content. Now, in this particular case, I have 2 still images and a video. You can see here on my step 2, I have a confirmation that's already turned on. That's because we took the acknowledgement from Creo Illustrate and turned it into a confirmation. It's basically the same thing. Did you do this? And then I can go ahead and publish that and turn it into a viewable procedure. If I go over here to preview, you see that this is just the same content. It's now just video and still images, and I didn't have to reauthor anything. You can see here on my step 2, I have a confirmation box that I could check and so on. So that's just to give you a quick understanding of what that Vuforia export and or publishing capability is. So with that, do we have any questions on that topic?
None on so far. We did have a returning question around the balloons and the view states, if that's all right.
Sure.
Is there a way to see the quantity and number of those balloons in various states, potentially maybe if they're in different locations?
Generally speaking, when you create a balloon call out and the call out is configured to show quantity as well as the item number, the quantity is dictated by how many items you have selected at the time you create the call out. And that's an important distinction. So if I create, I could, in essence, if I've got, say, 5 bolts, I could select 5 of them and create one call out on one side, and it would only show a quantity of 5. I could create another call out on the other side for the other 5 bolts. It would also show a quantity of 5. It's not going to give me the overall quantity of all the parts. It's only going to give me the quantity of the parts I have selected when I create the call out, or that the call out is attached to. And the example I just gave was, 2 sets of 5. So we will continue on.
Excellent.
Background processing for video export. So for publishing, we've had the ability for quite a while to actually process video in the background so that you're not seeing every frame render inside of Creo Illustrate. So what we've done is we've enabled the export capability from a sequence or animation to now give you that same capability. So instead of watching each frame render inside the 3D stage, it now sends that to a background process so that you can now continue on using Creo Illustrate to do something else. And there's nothing to see for that one because it does it all in the background. I'm not going to demo it. So are there any questions on the background processing? All right. So the next one, Inset View for callouts. So you've always, well, I wouldn't say you've always, we've added long time ago the ability to apply callouts inside the Inset View. But you were limited in how you could control them, like if you wanted to reposition the Inset View. So what we've done is we've given you a keyboard shortcut, the Shift key. So now, whether you have the keyboard shortcut enabled or not, when you drag the viewport, or excuse me, the Inset View around, the callouts will follow or not. I'll give you a quick example of that so you can see what it is that I am talking about. So you can see here I have an Inset View. I have 3 callouts. If I select that and I drag it, you see the callouts follow. They don't shift their, well, they do shift in position with the Inset View. If I hold the Shift key down now, though, I can move that and the balloons stay anchored. So if you went through and spent some time configuring exactly where you want those in association with maybe a bunch of others, maybe you did a loop around or something of that nature, and you need to reposition this or even rescale it. Now those don't. If I do that without the Shift key, you can see those change position with the Inset View. So this should give you the ability to better fine-tune your illustrations for those that are using Inset Views. So do we have any questions on that one?
One question around inset views, that is, can you have different renderings to insets and main assemblies? Yes, I believe that's what Jeff's showing right here. But I can let Jeff speak more on that.
So basically what happens here is when you set the camera inherits the view state, or the render style, excuse me, that you currently have active. We have not enabled the ability to go in and deliberately change the render style within here. But because this is actually a separate camera that's just inheriting the main view, even if we change the main view after the fact, this will stay in whatever render style was being used at the time you created it. So, if you want a different render style in here, that is the technique that you could use, but it's not something you could go back and set after the fact.
All right, and then the previous functionality you were showing in Vuforia Capture, is that also available in Vuforia Studio?
No. No, not yet.
Not yet.
We are working on normalizing, in essence, the work instruction package. Creo Illustrate is the first tool to export that work instruction package. Others across PTC will be doing that in their own time, but currently it is not. Creo Illustrate is the only one doing it as part of the product at this point. But that should be changing over time.
All right. Another question from the chat, and again, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box. I'll be able to answer those directly as well. But from the chat, it would be, how do you use a section view in an inset view? And again, I can provide a little answer there. So you would do the section view on your main render, and then that would appear in the inset view. So the inset view is providing the say another camera angle onto your main 3D assembly.
Right. Yeah. So it's not an independent view. It's a second camera looking at the same thing. So, and that's important to note. It is the same. This note, when I go in here and I pass over, that's because you're looking at the same part, just with a different camera. All right. Any other questions on stuff?
None yet. I'm sure more will come in.
All right. Then we will continue on. So this is one that I've been wanting to get in for a while. I just never seem to have the time. So this is pre-configuring your item list columns. So for those of you that are using Creo Illustrate to generate parts lists, and you're using the item table or item list table at the bottom, and there are specific columns that you want to see in that item list and so on. So what this does is it now allows you to pre-build or pre-specify what columns you want to show up in that item list, so that you don't have to do it for each and every figure that you build. It goes in, you can make it as part of your standard so that you don't have to do it on each and every single one. And you don't have to be concerned with having the individual illustrators remember to do that kind of thing. You can pre-bake it and it just shows up that way. So any questions on this one?
Nothing yet. Another question. Can we show reference designators in balloons?
You can show attributes. So if there is a model attribute, if that came in with your CAD data, you can use any of those attributes. But that is the only thing that you can use at the moment. Although, just as a sneak peek for 9.1, we are bringing in the ability, or tentatively, subject to change without notice because we haven't finished building it yet, the ability to have a combined attribute and editable text type callout. So you could have an attribute in there as well as manually type some text to create a bit more of a dynamic style callout, suitable for doing more custom style callouts based off of data that comes from the CAD model.
Thank you. Any updated training or coursework for instance, creating procedures in Creo Illustrate?
I know that the education department, who's the one that handles that doesn't actually go through me. They are working on new content, but I don't have the specifics on what the content is at the moment.
All right. Wonderful. Colton, I see your question here. I'm trying to understand what you're asking. So I think you can go ahead, Jeff, and we can circle back.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
So next up, for those of you that are using Creo Illustrate Professional and are creating 2D images as a child of the 3D figures, you now have the ability to break that link. Before, it was always associative. So if you made a change to the 3D figure, the 2D illustration would always update. Always is not always a good thing. So we've added in the ability to actually go in and break that link, keeping in mind once it's broken, it's broken. You're not going to be able to reestablish it. So if you wanted to keep a 2D version of a figure as sort of a historical version that's not necessarily up to date, or you want to keep the old one and then update a different one, you can do those kinds of things because you can now break that associative link. Any questions on this one?
Similar vein, how is the 2D output as compared to IsoDraw?
So the 2D capability in Creo Illustrate is much simpler. The intention here is, if the direct output of 3D to CGM, SVG, that kind of stuff isn't quite up to standard, so to speak. You have the ability to create a 2D child of that 3D figure and then go in, there are tools to draw ellipses, rectangles, straight lines, Bezier curves, that kind of stuff. There is a grid system that you can use as well. But it's primarily intended as more of a fine-tuning kind of thing, or in the event that maybe the CAD data is not complete. You might have a vendor part that you don't have CAD data for, and you need to draw that in, that kind of thing. That's the main focus there. It's not really intended to be, a draw from scratch kind of tool that Creo Illustrate, or excuse me, that IsoDraw certainly can do. It's more, I want to be able to edit the end result before I export it out as an SVG or a JPEG or a TIFF or whatever it is that you want to do it as.
And then just to finish up, there's an additional to that question,
Mm-hmm.
compatibility, or it's specified backwards compatibility from Creo Illustrate to IsoDraw. That is possible to save outputs from Creo Illustrate and open them in IsoDraw if you needed to do additional line drawing.
Yep.
The IsoDraw file formats are accessible from Creo Illustrate.
But it's important to note, though, that IsoDraw file coming out of Creo Illustrate is only 2D. The IsoDraw format can contain both 2D and 3D, but in this instance, it's only the 2D figure data that goes out to the IsoDraw native format that you could then bring into IsoDraw and do further editing if that's what you need to do. But if it's something that you're contemplating or think might be suitable, we would be more than happy to give you an eval license of Creo Illustrate Professional, so that you could see what, does it fill the requirements that you have around 2D. But again, its primary focus is fine-tuning the 3D content for a 2D delivery. It's not as powerful as IsoDraw as far as 2D, raw 2D power.
Great. A couple more questions. Is there a way to change the item list columns for all figures rather than doing that per figure?
Absolutely. So one of the things we've been doing over the past few years, there's a little bit of story here, so bear with me. We've been working on creating what we call the standard. So this is, your ability to go into Creo Illustrate, create a standard set of preferences or options, and then use that across all your users. So the item list is included in that standard now. And one of the other things that we added was the ability to batch apply a new standard to existing Creo Illustrate files. So this would go through and apply that standard to include the item list with columns to those legacy files, and would allow you to, update any of the other standards that you had set. And that same batch tool would also allow you to batch apply the new standard and then batch republish that content. It does not apply CAD changes. So if your content has, new versions of the CAD data that you brought in, we ignore that. The intention is to apply an updated standard and then republish the content if that's what you want to do. CAD changes are a bit more complicated, and I highly recommend that a human eyeball looks at it to make sure that the story that you're telling is still accurate. Changing the line weight or style of your balloon callouts, that kind of thing, that's one thing. But having parts appearing and disappearing and potentially destroying, your artwork, no, we want somebody to actually take a look at that. So we don't do that blindly in the background.
All right. Let's see, a couple more here, if you don't mind. Has functionality been added to add figure names to callouts?
To add figure names to callouts. I don't believe I've ever had anybody actually ask me for that. It's not that I recall. So I'd be curious to understand the why of having the figure name in the callout itself.
All right. Another one here. Let's see. Do we have the option to add shapes in 3D figures like in 2D figures? Yes, you can. There is a small library of 3D and 2D objects that you can add to 3D figures, and you can certainly add to that library. The 3D format would be inclusive of, if you can open it here in Creo Illustrate, you can save it as a format that you could add to that library.
Yeah, so any 3D shape that you can, in essence, turn into a .ol file, which is the individual geometry file, so to speak, for the Creo View, Creo Illustrate workflows, you could then add to the library inside of Creo Illustrate and be able to use that. So even if it's just a sphere or a square, or generally people use more complicated shapes like, hammers and screwdrivers and whatnot, but we don't really care what shape it is as long as it works for you.
And your use case, Jeff, for the figure names in the callouts would be potentially referencing a different figure within a figure.
Okay, so you would want cross-figure linking, not just within a figure. So if you have an editable callout, you can add any text that you want to into that particular one. But if you're looking at cross-linking between figures, that's a whole different subject. But I am open to exploring the idea.
All right. Oh, thank you, Mark, for putting that in the Q&A. Another one here, by unlinking the image from the 3D, can you create a new image that is linked?
And I'm not sure I followed that. Could you repeat?
Yes, so if you have a 2D figure and you unlink it, can you then go back to the parent and create a new child 2D?
Oh yeah, you can have as many 2D children as you want. That's not so much a thing. So yeah, if you break the link, or even before you break the link, if you create another one, you can do that. That is a perfectly valid thing to do. And the breaking of the link is on a per 2D figure basis. So breaking the link on one will not necessarily break the link on others.
All right, and another similar IsoDraw question would be, can we apply or show threads on screws on a 2D projection?
No. You could draw them. We have ellipses. But
and in IsoDraw, we also do have a thread drawing tool
right,
as well.
Yeah, that tool is not in Creo Illustrate. So if you wanted that level of detail, you'd need to draw it in or export it out and use the thread tool in IsoDraw to do that.
All right, great. I think we're all caught up here. So thank you, Jeff.
Okay. The last one. Yes, we support Windows 11 now. It's official. So for those of you that are on Windows 11, so the currently supported versions of Windows is 10 and 11. All other versions are not supported. And by supported, I mean, if you call us up with a problem, we will help you. If you're running it in some other way, that is not supported. It's not to say it wouldn't work, it's just not supported. And I'm assuming there's no questions on that.
None so far.
All right.
Oh, now's our reserved Q&A time. This has been good. Oh, actually, we do have a question here. Let's see.
Okay.
Any news or changes related to integration to Windchill? Are there different Windchill versions? Yes.
Well,
so all of the. Oh, go ahead,
yeah,
Jeff.
Go ahead.
I was just going to mention all of the compatibility matrix between Creo Illustrate versions and Windchill versions is documented. It is in a document called the Technical Graphics Compendium that you can find on our support site. And that will also detail between those operating system versions as well.
Yep.
All right. Let's see here. A couple more came in. Can page formats be applied to all figures at once? Similar to the question around the item list columns. Can you do that for all of your figures all at once?
No, that is not something we have done. And basically the reason is the page gets dropped in the middle. And depending on the size of the product and where you had it located and all those kinds of things, it may or may not even fit on the page. So just having it do that, you would still need to go back to every figure and make sure that it fits. If you've got a product that's, say 100 millimeters across or even 100 centimeters across, and your page is bigger or smaller than that, then visually it's not going to fit right. And you'll need to zoom the product in or out on the page itself to be able to get it to fit right. So now, with that being said, you can pre-configure page sizes in the standard, and that page size will now be available for the illustrator to use to apply to a sequence or to a parts page or whatever the case may be. But we do not automatically do that for you.
All right. Another question here. Let's see.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, they keep coming in. Here's a pretty basic one. Are leader lines automatic, and how do they update when the model is changed?
So the leader lines themselves are generated when you pull the call out away from the part. If you change the call outs themselves have a template, and based on the properties of the template, that's the visual properties for the callout. So if you change that template to have a different visual property, then you apply that new standard with that new template or with the updated template to your existing C3DI files, then all those leader lines would, assuming that was the property you changed, would inherit the new properties. I think that was the question.
Yes, I believe so. Are there any future forward-looking plans to include 3D modifiers in the animation, say a stretch or something like compressing a spring?
I can neither confirm or deny that we're working on dynamic stuff, but it is something that has been asked for to be able to, especially like for springs or wire harnesses to bend. If you're trying to show somebody how they pull a connector away from something else, well, it'd be nice if the wire harness bent when you move that out of the way, those kinds of things. So those are things on the to-do list. They are not currently in active development at the moment.
All right. A couple other just housekeeping things. I don't believe I can share links over this chat, but I will send you my email and you can send me an email and I can send you some links to videos we have on Creo Illustrate on our YouTube channel. And then another one here, is there a way to say move apart just a specific distance? Yes, if you hold down the control key while dragging, you will get a ruler that will default to your units of measurement you're using in the application. And while holding control, if you type in a distance and hit enter, the part will move that amount. So the question was referring to say just moving something 1 or 2 millimeters. Yes, you can. And you hold down the control key while dragging.
Yeah, so there's actually another option for that as well. If you still have the mouse engaged while you're dragging, and this goes for dragging on the X, Y, or Z, or even rotating. If you use the number pad and type in a value, it will apply that value to the change. The control gives you I believe it's a snappable ruler. So if you'd rather do it that way, but you can do it in either way. You can either while still dragging. And this is the important part, because if you type in the number and then you accidentally move the mouse while you're releasing the mouse button, it might nudge a little bit. So watch out for that.
Oh, great. Deb figured out how to, I must have just been copying and pasting incorrectly. We have a link to the YouTube Arbor Text page. If you do want, say, specific videos or even to chat, please feel free to email me directly. My email is sthompson@ptc.com.
All right. Any other questions?
We have some raised hands, but they'll have to enter the questions in the Q&A box to get them answered.
All right, and oh, okay, so templates for 2D output, ATA, another one specified as iSpec 2200. Some of these are going to be in, say, the specific file type outputs already. But I don't know, Jeff, if you have any other comments on, say, output standards for graphic format types.
Not specifically, as was mentioned, like if you're doing CGM, I think we've got a couple in there. But to be quite honest, we haven't gotten a lot of demand for something that specific. As far as the graphic format output, as far as if you wanted to create a standard, and Creo Illustrate can actually support multiple standards at the same time. Only one can be active, but you can have multiple standards in Creo Illustrate. So if you wanted to create a standard where your line weights and available colors and font sizes and whatnot were already set, you could absolutely do that. But to my knowledge, we haven't pre-built anything like that.
All right. Oh, can you merge steps or even multiple figures into one video for output?
So when you're in the sequencer and you go to export video, you have the option to export each step as a separate video or all of them as a single one. You do not have the ability to say, like, take steps 3, 4, and 5 and have that as one and still have steps 1 and 2 as separate ones. So it's either they're all separate or it's all combined into a single one. But there is no ability to combine multiple figures into a single video. There are tools in Creo Illustrate Sequencer to be able to copy and paste steps and collapse steps, multiple steps into a single step, or split steps into multiple steps, those kinds of things. But like, say from the video export capability, there's no tools in there to do that. You would have to pre-set up the video that you wanted to output before doing a video export.
All right, and just coming off a release here, a little note here to update our product calendar with all upcoming versions. I'm very certain that Jeff is on top of that. And let's see, I'm just reading here. Oh, it looks like there's folks are having an issue potentially with the standard file being reset when Creo Illustrate is open.
Yes.
That would we want to make sure that when you are opening that you're choosing the correct standard or have those standards available to everyone using the program.
Yeah, I think in this particular instance, if you go into Creo Illustrate and modify your standard, that does not save. There is an admin tool for Creo Illustrate now that you use to create new standards. That persists. If you're in Creo Illustrate just changing stuff, that does not persist. The intention is that you're using the standard. Now, if you are unaware of that, when you install Creo Illustrate, if you go through the advanced installation, when it asks you like what languages you want for your help libraries and that kind of thing, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there is an admin tool that you can install. It is optional, it's not required, but it is in essence required if you want to be able to create standards that persist. We removed that from the basic Creo Illustrate by request because they didn't want people modifying the standards. So if you use the admin tool, you can actually lock the standard. So you can lock individual pages, you can lock individual options, all of that kind of stuff to set it up the way you want your users using it, and then that's what they use. So if you need assistance with getting all of that done, please feel free to reach out and we can help walk you through that.
All right, I believe we have answered all the open questions.
Awesome.
Great. Well, thanks, everybody. I appreciate everyone's time today, and I have recorded this session, so it will be posted on the Arbor Text YouTube page in the next couple of days, and I will send out an email notification once it's available to download, and I'll be sending it to everybody who's registered. So even if you've registered, maybe you have a colleague that registered but couldn't attend, they will get an email with a link to the recording. So thanks, everybody. And thank you, Jeff and Thomas. Sorry about that, Scott. Thanks for your time today. I appreciate
No
it.
problem.
Okay. Take
All right,
care.
thanks, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.